like sweater look, and she was kind of just a force to be reckoned with. She had a tendency of running away from home, but always left notes or stayed in some sort of contact with her family. It wasn't ever truly running away, but more of kind of a 14-year-old feeling this like sense of freedom and feeling like they were grown up. So I can personally remember kind of feeling this way, feeling like I was very grown at the age of 14, 15 years old. So very driven by emotions and feelings. So I have a picture up now of Fame, and Fame went missing on July 11th, 1990, and because of her track record with all of the other incidents regarding her running away, her family was fairly unbothered that she went missing. I think they knew that it was under a little bit different circumstances because there was no note, there was no real contact from her, and they just assumed that Fame would eventually come home like she always does. Because I am talking about this case, she clearly does not come home like she always does, and it would actually be months that no one heard from Fame. And I know what you're probably thinking, why is it months and no one's heard from her and there's no form of investigation yet? I had the same question. Her family knew from the start that this was out of the ordinary because she didn't leave a note or check in with them. But she was getting older and they thought maybe lashing out in bolder ways, like staying away for longer periods of time. It was, again, July 11th that Fame went missing / ran away, and it wouldn't be until September of that same year that her family would report her missing to authorities. And I could not find an exact date that they reported her missing, but at the minimum, it would have been a month and a half, because if you're assuming they called on September 1st, she went missing on July 11th, that's all of August, half of July, and probably it wasn't September 1st, so who knows, at least 1.5 months up to 2 months that they did not report her missing. So who was Fame, and how did we get into a situation like this? And I think speaking on her personality, her dreams, kind of the way she held herself and interacted with others is very important in understanding kind of her story and how we get from A to B here. So I'm gonna first talk about her childhood. Her childhood was really not normal in the grand scheme of things. Her father, Rick Less, was convicted of murder in 1989. He murdered a woman named Cindy Croston, and Fame would have been 11 when the murder took place, and she would go missing the year after that he was convicted of the murder, so 14 when her father went to prison. So Fame lived with her maternal aunt and her 3 other siblings that were all born basically with different last names to all different men. So I looked through a ton of articles, and I think it was like 6 or 7, maybe even 8 that I end up using for this. No mention of Fame's mother, really, other than Fame's siblings were all from different men, so she didn't live with her mom. I guess she wasn't really in contact with her mom, it sounds like. Same with her dad. So she lived with her mom's sister, so her maternal aunt, and it was noted that Fame did want to know her father, but he did not want to know her, and I think she knew that. So I think for anybody, this would play a major role in poor mental health, or just kind of having a damper on your life. This is your father, he doesn't want anything to do with you. So I think it was definitely very damaging for Fame in this whole situation. So fast forward to Fame's teenage years. was just kind of that jump between 13 to 14, 15 years old. That is kind of a major, I would say major turning point in how you perceive the world. I think 14 is a very rebellious age. Not for everybody, but I think that is, if you're going to be rebellious, it happens late 13, 14, 15 years old or so. So that's, where most of this is taking place, with her being in this 13 to 15 age range. So Fame was skipping school. She was running away so frequently that her family felt the need to send her to a girls' home. And she did that, and she returned, and the family tried to make sure that she would kind of keep a straight path. And they found her an adult mentor to just kind of like help, I don't know, someone to talk to, someone to just keep pushing her in the right direction. And that individual was Reverend Saunders. And Saunders could tell that Fame was the type that, and I quote, had been through the mill. So he knew she was a fairly troubled teen, had a fairly troubled childhood, and there's going to be some from Reverend Saunders just throughout this video about what he has to say about the whole situation. So this is a little self-harm trigger warning. In January of 1990, Fame would attempt to OD on cold medicine. While they tried to keep her in counseling after this, Fame would opt out basically at any chance that she could, and just try to keep remembering the timeline of all this. This is January 1990. She goes missing in July, so I would say this is a very notable incident that happened, and just keep it in your mind, I suppose. So Fame had an old friend from elementary school named Bobby, and Bobby speaks on the last time that she saw her friend in 1990 at a lock-in event. And I knew what a lock-in was. I guess maybe it's common knowledge. I don't really know, just in case. A lock-in is like kind of, it surrounds some like theme. Maybe it's for church, maybe it's just for school or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or whatever. And generally there's activities, and basically they do these activities. It's later at night, and when they're done, they sleep at the place that the lock-in is being held, and they wake up and go home in the morning. So I loved lock-ins when I was little. I thought they were so much fun. Anyway, Bobby says by the time the girls made it to high school, their elementary friendship was a little bit strained. Not really like strained in a bad way, but strained in a distance way. They were distancing from each other. So they still kind of hung around from time to time. Maybe it felt a little more because they felt like they had to, but Bobby noticed this same kind of behavior shift in Fame, and I don't think it's necessarily uncommon, but Fame seemed to kind of become like a typical angsty teen. She was moody. She wanted to show off to her new friends. She wanted people to think that she was funny. She wanted to do things that was funny to others, and cuss and curse and kind of just, I don't know, I think fairly typical. But Bobby recalls a very specific event from the lock-in. Since I can't say it better than Bobby, here is a straight quote from Bobby that I found in a WBOY news article. I remember at one point she was sitting behind me and was cussing and talking, and the guy in front of us was talking, and I turned around like, Fame, stop, it's not nice. She just looked at me like, what? And so we didn't have a good interaction with each other at that point, Bobby explained. But I knew she was going through some stuff, and it happens. I really like Bobby. She, we'll see, becomes a bigger part of Fame's disappearance kind of down the road. So on the screen now is a photo of Bobby and Fame as childhood friends. Fame is on the right in the striped outfit. So this lock-in would be the last time that Bobby saw her friend Fame. Fame's sister also has some notable experiences with Fame right before she went missing. She last saw her sister around July 4th. Fame had invited her sister over for a sleepover, and then she ended up going to hang out with other friends, and her sister explained how she was really annoyed and upset at the time because Fame had invited her over in the first place. And I know it's kind of like odd that I'm saying invited your sister over and they're like a teenage, but you have to remember they all have different dads, so they all have different childhood and home lives to some degree, and that's why there is infighting going on between siblings. So her sister goes on to explain how bright and friendly Fame was. She was troubled, and some of her actions make her seem like a bad person, but she was far from it. And I wanted to make sure to include that because so much of the articles and what I have been saying about Fame, it feels negative, and I don't think, and it's clear to her sister, to her siblings and friends and family, yes, she was troubled. I mean, she had a very troubled upbringing. Her dad was a murderer, is a murderer. I don't know if he's still alive, but we kind of have to talk about those things to make it that everything makes sense and click. But again, very bright, very friendly, and she did have dreams and she wanted a life. So I now want to discuss the very limited information regarding the actual movements and disappearance of Fame Cooper. So on July 10th, 1990, Fame went to an arcade with friends located in Fairmont, West Virginia. Bobby would later speak to these same friends that went to the arcade with Fame. And so again, here's Bobby. You're gonna find out that Bobby did a lot of digging and is still doing this digging. So Bobby says that friends recalled that Fame did not want to leave the arcade when the rest of them were ready to go. So they left her behind at the arcade. I didn't get any indication that this was in a malicious way, it was a malicious action. I think they were just ready to go home and were tired of being there, and so they were like, okay, if you're not ready, we're gonna leave. And it seemed that Fame wanted to be anywhere else but home. So this arcade was the last place that anybody saw Fame alive and well, and really, unfortunately, that is most of the information regarding her movements and her disappearance around July 10th and 11th. So now we're going to fast forward to September. Her family would finally report Fame missing. This didn't lead to very much initially, but eventually news would break of a body being discovered 55 minutes northwest of Fairmont, West Virginia. Two hunters found the body of Fame Cooper. And I say 55 northwest of Fairmont because that was where the arcade was. So investigations lead police to 4 different men who are all eventually cleared in one way or another. Not a ton of information around that, but I guess they were cleared. The then sheriff spoke on Fame's murder. He says it was clear somebody took her life. Evidence and examination would confirm this. Ligatures on the body told police that she had been tied up, likely with wire. Death via natural causes does not occur when someone is tied up, period. Through investigation of Fame's life, they find much of what I've already told you about. She had a very rough go at childhood. She was forced into growing up fast and had no choice but to embrace it. So when I do speak about her being an angsty teen that wanted to grow up fast, it kind of wasn't her choice. She kind of just had to. Police Police even go as far to say as they believe she had very little chance to lead a life without some risks, whether that's running away, getting into trouble, mainly because of the level of supervision that she had. Well, the lack thereof supervision, because there was basically none. Someone out there potentially knew this, or at least figured it out and used it to their advantage. Police give Reverend Saunders a handwritten note that they found addressed to him in Fame's pocket. And there's not a lot of talk about this note, and I really don't know why, because it's so strange to me. And this is what it reads. Dear Pastor, please pray for my sister. Please pray for my brother. Please pray for my family. But Pastor, thank you for leading me to Jesus. And totally away from every possible conspiracy ever, like the furthest from it, it could just be a note that she wrote. She had a thought, she was feeling thankful, and she wrote it and she shoved it in her pocket, and she happened to meet with, some horrible, tragic ending. And that, I feel like, could have happened. It's very logical. I think this note is a little strange, and I think it maybe breaks away from that logical scenario a little bit. I don't know, though. It's just very odd, and we're going to touch on that maybe a little bit later. So regardless of the note, the situation police have is a young runaway, clearly met with foul play, whether she chose to run away or whether she didn't, and minimal evidence at the scene. A few years later, police would find another body, that of Kimmy Eddy, and I will picture Kimmy on the screen now. Kimmy was also the type to run away and kind of had similar upbringings to Fame. Her body was found in a rural wooded area just like Fame's. Cause of death was undetermined, similar to Fame's. The murder would have taken place close to, within 5 years of each other. They found her body 2 years after Fame, but I had issues with determining, if when they ruled that she had died, if it was prior, if it was after. I think it was after, but because of this, police never ruled out a serial killer. It was in the same area, I think even the same county. I do want to mention one thing that kind of brings us back to Fame's family life. And this is a quote that I found particularly odd. And it came from Fame's aunt and legal guardian. And so this quote reads, and we'll see how you feel about it when I read it. She'd be gone for a few days, but she'd always leave a note telling us not to worry. We would call the police every time she ran away. So what do you guys think about that? When I read this, I instantly thought she contradicted herself a little bit. She said she'd be gone for a few days, but she'd always call police. But they didn't call police for months. Why? That doesn't make any sense. She runs away all the time. We always call police, but she returns in a few days. So to me, that's saying they call police at least within a few days, because she always comes home within a few days. And I just, icky vibes, lying vibes. I don't like when family members that, I don't know. I think she catches some heat. I don't know. That it's just a quote that makes me feel icky. And maybe you guys have other thoughts on it, but to me, they didn't report her missing for at least a month and a half, but she quotes that they always report her missing, so I want to know what was different about this time. This really just brings us to theories. And obviously the main theory is that Fame was murdered and that it was just circumstantial. She, maybe a crime of opportunity, she ran into or met up with someone that was not who they said they were. So Fame's sister actually has a theory. She believes it was a right place at the wrong time situation. She thinks Fame overheard something that would incriminate somebody, and she feels that it was a chance encounter and situation that led to her sister's murder. I think this is very likely Fame kind of, ran around doing, whatever she did around, and potentially could have found herself in a very odd situation or a place where she heard something, saw something, whatever. Very likely, I think. Because of how much family and friends say that Fame craved the attention of boys, males, men at this time in her life, I think it's fairly plausible that she went with or met up with somebody that just was not who they said they were. They were older than they said, or they were older than they looked. And potentially that's why she stayed at the arcade longer. She wanted to go meet up with somebody. Because of the time period this happened, of course, there's the breadcrumbs from technology, from direct messages, from Tinder, that just doesn't exist. So in something like this, we just don't know. A not very talked about theory, mainly because it borders conspiracy quite a bit. It's very out there, but a staged assisted suicide to look like a murder. So I actually think I saw this on like a blog. Like, it was not anything substantial. If you're gonna commit suicide, like, I feel like you don't go through like these steps of staging. And the note that I read from Reverend Saunders, I think, is the main thing that supports a theory like this, because it was so troubling and so odd. But given the information that we know about Fame, it doesn't make sense that she would go through these steps. So I don't really put much weight into this theory. Again, the note is a little troubling, but it doesn't seem like a thing that would happen. But you never know. Crazier has happened. So beyond all of these theories, I kind of have some good news. Not great news, but police are almost certain they know who murdered Fame. Police explain why they can't yet pursue this individual, and they say, "We were confident he had committed the murder, but there just wasn't enough evidence to file murder charges. With double jeopardy, if we had gone to trial and he was acquitted, even if we found major evidence the next week, we couldn't try him again. We had him in jail on unrelated charges, but I'm confident he got away with these murders." And I think he means Kimmy Eddie too. Maybe more. I don't know. So, while they are still investigating, Fame's sister and friend Bobby are trying to get more movement on the case involving like modern DNA testing and things that will help solve this 30-year-old case, because it happens. 50-year-old cases get solved with modern technology. So they are really pushing for that. And of course it takes funding. Of course it takes time. In October 2019, Bobby said a red cardinal kept hitting her window over and over. According to WBOY article, she says, quote, "Because I know red cardinals are angels of people who passed away that are trying to get your attention. That's what they're supposed to be." Since this happened, Bobby said she took it as a sign to really get the ball rolling on Fame's case and learning about new leads and DNA testing and using modern technology. It really was like a very big moment, a big motivating factor for Bobby. And so while they are still working for justice for Bobby, here is a picture of a wink wink man being sought out for failure to appear in court after being indicted on sexual assault charges. So if you have seen this man, Norbert McGinty, police called the Marion County Sheriff's Office at 304-367-5255 see you guys next week.